Good evening and welcome to tonight's shiur. It's Thursday of Parshas Sovo, and we'll start off with some very interesting feedback on wearing watches on Yomtov. And this we went through, I think, was Parshas Halocho, about Chabad not wearing on Yomtov, and how there's a sicha from Mayazeda's memoirs from Tov Reish Peches, as he was very embarrassed. He had his fob watch in his pocket when the Rebbe spoke about how inappropriate it is. And we had also from the Montreal Polish Tmimim remembered from Tov Reish Tzadik Aleph Tzadik Beis, when the Rebbe back in, was it Warsaw or was it Antvorsk, told whoever's wearing a watch should take it off and put it in on the table, and after Yom Tov they'll get them back. We also have in Tavshilin base with a halachic, where the Rebbe says you don't know that in the Bible you don't wear a watch on Yom Tov. From now on you shouldn't wear a watch. So, but now someone sent me another. So it's not so explicit, but it is. It's just, definitely that's the pshat. This is in Tov Reish Peites, also Simchas Torah. Whoever wears a chain on Yom Tov, that's not appropriate. It causes a haShono, a coarseness. Hey, it's Yom Tov, and it's an ornament you're wearing on Yom Tov. Can you not hear? Any better now? Can you hear me now? Is the sound now coming through?
I can hear you.
Okay. So, all right. Well, thank you. Um, all right, we'll continue with the Sirka, right? So he says that wearing a watch, so wearing a chain, yeah? So it's for Yom Tov. So, but it's not appropriate. He says, like you have a turkey for Yom Tov. So you can make it, the Yom Tov becomes a turkey. Yeah, a turkey for Yom Tov is good. When the Yom Tov is because of the turkey, so then that's a helm, it's a concealment, and it causes a coarseness, a haShono. No, on the weekday you wear a chain, so that's to be able to get a better loan. You have a nicer chain, so you get a better loan. He mentioned the Ruzhiner, so he would go in a silver carriage. So for some people that's an avodah. And Beis Hamikdash, by the Rabbeim, by our Rabbeim, it wasn't such a thing of using silver utensils. By the Rebbe is referring to some of the Alter Rebbe. We go Weisserstone. The furniture was unpainted, but just uh, plain wood. But there was where is in charge of them. It doesn't megash. Okay, for them, one who a wealthy lifestyle is not his avodah, so he makes him more megush. Oh, but Yom Tov darf man nicht tragen Kiketler. But Yom Tov shouldn't be wearing a chain, and then the children will know that's Yom Tov. They'll know that Yom Tov is you stand higher, and then we should tell the children about the Yom Tov if they don't know about it. So what you're seeing here, this chain is, what does it mean, a chain? It obviously means the old fob watches, where you had a waistcoat, and in the pocket of the waistcoat, you had this round watch, and when you need the time, to see the time, you pulled out this fob and you opened it up, and etc. That's obviously what he's talking about. So you got several sichos. This is from, as I said, this is from Tov Reish Peites. That's from Tov Reish Peites, Tov Reish Sadik Beis, Tov Yud Beis, etc. Okay. Just as I'm reading this, the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe that is, says by the Rebbeim is nishvin azay lishtamish bekesef. So Reb Zalman Jaffe, if I'm not mistaken, at one stage wanted to offer the Rebbe a gift, a silver flask for wine, and the Rebbe refused to accept it. And this might be where the Rebbe was coming from. In Chabad, that wasn't a seder of silver items for the Rebbes. Okay, let's move on. So this past Sunday, I participated in a very beautiful event in Manchester, It was honoring 60 years since Rabbi Jaffe and his late Rebbetzin began their activities. And okay, so because I'd eaten sandwiches on my way, so I didn't feel like washing another time. So, all right, so I sat down and I had a glass of wine. So l'chaim. Then they brought soup. And as I'm holding the loose spoon in my hand with the soup, I think, well, hang on a second. I had a goffin. Do I have to make a separate broch on the soup? Because there's a halacha that yayin, you can see here, yayin is poiter kol mini mashkin. You made a brocha hagofen, and then you're going to have a drink of vodka or lemonade or coffee, whatever you have after the wine. So you don't have to make a separate brocha. So here I had a bit of wine, and now I'm having a drink. It's called chicken soup. So do I have to make a separate brocha on the chicken soup? We don't. Yeah, you can see where I'm coming from. Balabatish, you don't think of soup as being a drink, think as a food. So not so poshut, yeah. So what we're seeing here, though, is that you don't have to make a brocha on subsequent drinks is only either if the other drinks were in front of you when you made hagofen, or that you had in mind that you're going to have those other drinks. So if you're whatever it is, a Shabbos table, whatever it may be, a kiddush. So when you have the hagofen, you have in mind there'll be other drinks at the table. You have those in mind. But I certainly at the time when I said l'chaim, I didn't think that they're going to serve soup. So I was justified in making a brocha. What happens if it's a boire pri ha'adamo soup? If it's a vegetable soup, the brocha is boire pri ha'adamo. Would it make sense that boire pri ha'adamo soup is still called a drink? So Reb Chaim Noy is like he's not so inclined that way. He says he feels it's hadoma because it's a food. If that's the case, then yeah, if you have the vegetable soup with vegetables, you're right. You're going to make hadoma in any case. But let's say if it is a vegetable soup, but you're just having they are vegetables there, but you're just having the soup without any vegetables. Okay, so then you should be making a beire pri hadomo on that soup, and then becomes a question: if you had wine, is it included? Okay, just I thought I'd share that because for me it was a little bit of a chiddush that that perhaps I should not have made a brocha on the soup because it had wine. Okay, let's move on, and this is going to be a bit of a challenging one, and that is that it's coming up Rosh Hashanah. And someone's raising the point, surely as a guest, you didn't have to have in mind. A good point. I didn't have to have in mind that there's going to be soup. It didn't occur to me at all when I made the brocha hagofen that I'm going to have another drink of soup. Didn't occur to me. Okay. But the Eved, I hope it wasn't a brocha lavatola. We'll find out as Hashem. Okay. So now let's move on. So here, someone asked me, it's coming Rosh Hashanah, and Rosh Hashanah is Thursday and Friday, goes into Shabbos. And there is the incident of Eruv Tavshilin. Yeah? Okay. Now, many people have got a minhag to light a candle for Shabbos Shuva. It's mentioned in Sefer HaMinhagim that Rabbi Sin and the Siena, based minhag based on Rav, I think it says, would light a candle for Shabbos Shuva. Then there's a famous story. See, just let me explain the history of this. The history was that they would prepare wicks, thin threads, thin strands for each member of the family, and they would measure them. This is for Yankala, this is for Sarla, and this is for, etc. And then they took all of those strands and braided them into a wig. And then was this wig, they dipped it in wax, and again and again, they made a thick candle, and then a big stubby candle. That was the Shabbos Shuva licht. Then, the way it's described with Friedrich Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek had a large family, and they made candles. But as the family grew, they couldn't fit all the wicks into one candle, so they made a second candle. As the family grew even more, so then one day they made three candles. And so the Rebbe comes in,
Dreilicht, there's a whole his spoilers, however you say that in English. All like, wow, three candles. And then the Tzemach says, yeah, three candles. It explains that the Indian of three aspects of tshuva. And so there's a sikha where the Rebbe talks about minig of lighting three candles, Shabbos Shuva. Okay, be that as it may. So here comes the question: can you light on Friday? May you light a Shabbos Shuva licht on the basis of your Eruv Tavshilin? So let's go through this carefully. So here you have on the screen, you've got Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, Siman Tzadik Ches, where he writes that one should not light a yortzeit candle on Yomtov. He brings it from Shilas Shuvas Imre Ash, Aish. This is from Rav Meir Eisenstadt. That's what his name. Imre is Meir. And he takes the view that a yortzeit candle is not needed for the Yomtov. It is, all right, they've got other needs. It's a memorial candle, but it's not Tzorech Hayoim. Yeah, you have it's not a Tzorech Nefesh, that's not okay. Therefore, he says, no, you shouldn't be lighting a yortzeit candle on Yom Tov. In the Kitzur with the Mizgeres HaShulchan, he quotes, he says, the minig is to be makel, that one does light a yortzeit candle on Yom Tov. He refers us to the Mogen Avraham, the Alter Rebbe, in Siman Reish Samach Aleph. Now, Siman Reish Samach Aleph is in Hilchos Shabbos, not Hilchos Yom Tov. So what does he have in Hilchos Shabbos? So here is Hilchos Shabbos, here is talking about the onset of Shabbos, Bein Hashmoshes, and it says that Bein Hashmoshes, because it's a suffix Yom or Laila, you are allowed to tell a goy to do a malacha. Amir l'nochri is muter Bein Hashmoshes. So here we have muter loyma l'nochri, to light a candle, Bein Hashmoshes. Because that's a tzorech mitzvah. You need to light for Shabbos, you can ask God to light it, it's a tzorech mitzvah. Next. Then you are even allowed to ask a goy, Ben Hashmoshes, if you have yortzeit on Shabbos, and you forgot to light your yortzeit candle, so Ben Hashmoshes, you'll have to ask the goy to light your yortzeit candle. Why is it? Why? What's the heter for that? Because the oilon is zohorin bazeh, because people are very careful to light a yortzeit candle on yortzeit. Harezeh ketzoyder godel. It becomes like doesn't call it tzorech mitzvah, he calls it a tzorech godel. Since it's a tzorech godel, that if you won't do it, you'll have tsar, you'll be distraught, then it's permitted ben hashmoshes, even though it's not tzorech Shabbos. So this is what the Mizgeres HaShulchan is saying, that since we see that ben hashmoshes of a Friday evening, you are allowed to ask a guy to light a candle, a yortzeit candle, because it's a tzorech gadol. So he wants to compare, to say that on Yom Tov, it's also permitted to light a yortzeit candle. Now, that's all very well if you'd say that Yom Tov, you're allowed to do something for tzorech gadol. But if you say that Yom Tov has to be tzorech hayoim, so then we're back to the question. Now, I looked up the Imre Eish, and he actually refers to this haloch in Siman Reish Samach Aleph, not to the Alter Rebbe, but to the Mogen Avraham. But he says it's not the same, because this is tzorech hayoim. I'm sorry, when the yortzeit candle is not tzorech hayoim. It's not you're lacking light. It's to commemorate. Okay, let's move on over the page. And this is where we have in the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, where he talks about the Ner Shel Baltola, a flame which is lit for no purpose. Then you're not allowed to light it on Yom Tov. You're only allowed to make a flame, even not for Echel Nefesh. It has to be tzorech hayoim ksas. It has to be for the needs of the day. But if you're just miskaven to have lots of candles, if you're making it to make it nice and bright, it's not called Ner Shel Baltola, that's okay. But if you're just making lots of candles just to show how much you're spendthrift, etc., and it's not the covered Yom Tov, you wouldn't be allowed. So therefore, this question: can you light a yortzeit candle on Yomtov, so it's actually a debate, yeah? And is it Tzarech Hayom, or not? Then we'll also look at Mishnah Brura in the Beer Halocha. I think it's also in Tov Kuf Yud Dalet. Nesha Yortzeit. If you didn't light it before Yom Tov, make sure you light it in the room where you're eating, because it's going to also add light. Better light it in shul, and then it's not Nesha Batola because it's enhancing the shul. B'shas Adchak, he says you can light a Yortzeit candle because it's a kind of ner mitzvah. So you see, he's changed the wording here. The Alter Rebbe had said it's Tzoyrech Godel, and the Mishnah Berurah is saying Ner Shel Mitzvah, and he refers us to the Ksav Sofer. All right, very interesting. Now, the Rebbe had a younger sister-in-law whose name was Shane. Her husband, I think, his name was, I think, Reb Mendel Hornstein. And when the time when the Rebbe was in Paris, they were also in Paris. There's the late should we say the late night what's it 1890s, yeah, no, late 1930s, yeah. And then, well, the Rebbe and his wife, the Rebbetzin, managed to come to Europe, to America, whereas unfortunately Mendel Hornstein and his wife, Shana, they were taken by the Nazis. They taken to Treblinka, and they were taken to the gas chambers on Rosh Hashanah, on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. And there's a correspondence of the Rebbe with someone who was there in Treblinka to confirm the exact details of when it happened. So what we see here is how the Rebbe would give Rabbi Groner a candle Erev Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Groner writes in his diary from Tafshin Chavtes, and Erev Rosh Hashanah, after Mincha, the Rebbe gave him a wax candle to light on the eve of the second day of Rosh Hashanah. So the Rebbe was nohig to light candles, Yortzeit candles. Now, what's also worth commenting, it's not a candle of mitzvah l'kovod avoso. It's for his sister-in-law. So it's not a mitzvah of kibbud avim. It's a memorial, it's a tzorech godel, not a tzorech mitzvah. And still, the Rebbe was nohig to light candle, Yortzeit candle. So going back, Yortzeit candle. To light a Yortzeit candle, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says no. Others say yes. All right, I guess the Shulchan is also a posek of sorts. All right, so we have that debate. What we're going to talk about now is, let's say, if it's not talking about a Yortzeit on Yomtov, but it's a Yortzeit which is on Shabbos, which follows after Yomtov. So now you want to say that, well, for the Eruv Tavshilin, allows you to do on Friday the needs of Shabbos. So to say that the Yortzeit candle, which is Tzorech Godel or Tzorech Mitzvah, to say that it's a Tzorech for Shabbos is also a bit of a stretch. But, and actually, I've seen in some Sforim where they say that, I think actually Mishnah Berurah even says so, that if that's the setting, that you need to light a candle for a Yortzeit, which is on Shabbos following Yom Tov, about getting a goy to light the candle. Of course, there's an alternative. There's a simple alternative of lighting a larger candle, which lasts for several days. Now, so let's what we said now. We've said about Yortzeit candle for a Yortzeit which is on Yom Tov. Then we've gone on to a Yortzeit candle which is for a Yortzeit on Shabbos, which would be more difficult to justify. Now we go on to a Shabbos Shuva licht. The Shabbos Shuva licht is obviously not as a obvious tzorech as a Yortzeit licht, because a Yortzeit licht is something which is across the board, whereas Shabbos Shuva licht. So, on the other hand, there are those people who are particular to always light a Shabbos Shuva licht. So my response to the one who asked me this is someone who's used to every year lighting a Shabbos Shuva licht, then one would rely on to be mekel, to use the Eruv Tavshilin as a Tzorech Godel. Okay, that's not too different from a Yortzeit candle, although I am apprehensive. But someone who's not used to lighting a Shabbos Shuva licht,
I don't think they should be beginning such a thing in such a kvias. Alternatively, you can avoid this question. If you want to have a Shabbos Shuva licht, as I say, you can buy these larger candles, which will last for the 3 days, and that solves your problem. Okay, let's move on. So, yes, so since we're into Erev Tavshilin discussion, so I was actually in school, in the Lubavitch Senior Girls School. I've been learning with the top two classes, been learning about Erev Tavshilin. We've been using the text, and it came out very interesting that something like sushi would not be acceptable for Erev Tavshilin. So for those who don't know what sushi is, I'm going to tell you my understanding. It's rice, sometimes wrapped around with a seaweed leaf or something. And inside is put a bit of a raw fish. So this is a sea. I know there's many different types of sushi. I know, no. I'm talking about this is what I'm talking about. Okay. So now the halacha is the following. For Eruv Tavshilin, you have to have a cooked food and a baked food. The main thing is the cooked food. Now, here there's the following requirement about that cooked food. Erev Tavshilin has to be a cooked food, which is used as a companion to bread, like a protein, like meat, fish, eggs, the things which people normally have as a companion to the bread. But you wouldn't be able to use something like a porridge, a kasha, or something like that, because that's not the type of thing which would have as a companion to the bread. In other words, bread is a carb, and something like a kasha is also a carb. So that would not work. So rice would fall into the same category as a kasha, which would be a carb, and therefore it's not eligible for Erev Tavshilin. So rice is no good for Erev Tavshilin. It's cooked, I know, but it's not eligible for Erev Tavshilin. The fish, well, if the fish is raw, then it's not cooked, doesn't work for Erev Tavshilin. If it is cooked fish, which sometimes the sushi is with cooked fish, then you'd have to make sure that you have a kazais, a volume of a kazais in all the pieces of sushi that you should be justified as Erev Tavshilin. Okay, right. Why do people generally make the Erev Tavshilin with an egg rather than anything like a meat or fish? I think that's an old custom where people didn't have fridges. And so the worry was a piece of meat, a piece of fish might go off. So as a boiled egg would keep better without refrigeration or whatever. So it could be that's the background why people use eggs widely for Erev Tavshilin. But it does say in Poskim that it is better to use something more respectable, a portion of meat or a portion of fish. It's a mitzvah, so you want to do it in a more beautiful way. And the separate thing is with the challah, when we use this again for lechem mishneh, for Friday night and for Shabbos day, which is well known. There's no chiyuv to use the portion of meat or fish at a particular juncture on Shabbos, but you're doing a mitzvah, so you want to do it in a more beautiful way. An egg is not such a choshev of food. I heard that once that the Rebbe saw that in Gan Yisroel, they were serving eggs for boiled eggs for Matzah Shabbos. And the Rebbe took exception. He said it's more like a Avelis type of food, or it shouldn't be the menu. Okay, let's move on to another thing. Also about Erev Tavshilin. Someone is asking, may one have mezainis if one's not? Can the Erev Tavshilin be made of mezainis? That's a good question. I think yes. If it's baked, I think that's okay. Normally we take a challah and we take a whole challah, but mezainis is also upgradable as bread, so I think so. Okay, let's move on. Or if you're not eating at home, but perhaps you have matzah, you can use matzah is also good. Okay. Erev Tavshilin, the word is that the Erev Tavshilin is only effective to allow you to cook on Friday earlier in the day, because there's a certain pretext. What are you cooking on? You can say, I'm cooking on Friday, it could be I'll have some unexpected guests on Friday. It could be there'll be some hungry people, and they'll just come in, haven't eaten today, on Friday, and so the food which I'm cooking on Friday will be eligible for them to eat on Friday. The pail I'm going to leave it for tomorrow, but it's not a malacha d'omer min haTorah because it's edible on Friday. But what about putting up food raw at close to the end of Friday, and it's going to cook into Shabbos? Well, that wouldn't be okay because then you've done an act of cooking on Friday, which is it's not possible that it will be enjoyed on Friday. It's being done for Shabbos. The Eruv Tavshilin doesn't allow that, and indeed the minig was to make the davening early when it's an Erev Tavshilin kvias, to make a ma'ariv early, to encourage that in the houses the food should be ready in good time before Shabbos. But then you have here something very interesting. We all know from Yochas Shabbos, we know this gangster by the name of Ben Derusoi, and he was accustomed to eat his food something half cooked or a third cooked. So now here you have in the Mikitza Shulchan, he says that the food for the Erev Tavshilin has to be at least a third cooked before Shabbos. So Cholent. Does the Cholent have to be fully cooked before Shabbos, before sunset, or can it be half cooked? So according to the Kitzur Shulchan, he says if it's a third cook, that's good enough. So I was mentioned before about the Kitzur Shulchan, which I was asked to add Minhagi Chabad. So this is from that edition. So we left the Kitzur Shulchan as it was. So Rabbi Alashvili from Lud, a tremendous Talmud Chochem, and he writes to me, you can't leave that. The Alter Rebbe doesn't say a word of such a thing about a third of the cooking. And you have to understand, your whole pretext is, oh, I'm a cooking on Friday. It could be that there'll be guests. Yeah, and it could be it's going to be Ben Derusoi is come to visit me also. It's kind of to say, oh, if someone would cook on Yomtov or after Yomtov, and they hold him to Bestin, and they interrogated, why did you do it when you cooked on Yomtov or after Yomtov? We'll say, well, there could have been some late visitors. But to say that I cooked on Friday a dish, and well, of course I did it for the other day, but it could be that Ben Derusoi would arrive. That's such a remote. It's called, perhaps you use the term miuta de miuta. It is such a remote possibility that perhaps shouldn't be a reason for acquittal altogether. At any rate, so that to say that the cholent can be a third cook before Shabbos comes in, because of Ben Derusoi, that is indeed the Pri Megadim's position, who was a little bit earlier than the Alter Rebbe, wasn't published until later during the Alter Rebbe's times. The Alter Rebbe doesn't say a word of it, and therefore, in the future edition of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, we're going to have here a note that the Alter Rebbe does not mention this business of a third cooked, and therefore it remains, according to the Alter Rebbe, that the cholent has to be fully cooked, fully edible for most people before Shabbos comes in. Okay, let's move on. So I was thinking about Succos is coming, and we sit in the sukkah, and then we enjoy being exposed to wildlife somewhat. And part of the joys of wildlife is that you got bees coming buzzing around in the sukkah, and then people start getting frantic and etc. etc. So are you allowed to put there's this wasp on the tablecloth? Are you allowed to take a cup and put it on top of that wasp, and then you'll find a way of taking it out of the sukkah? So I know there are various methods to discourage wasps and bees in the sukkah. Go to your hardware store for that advice. But meanwhile, our question is: you're in the sukkah and you've got some wasps or bees in the sukkah. Are you allowed to trap them? So, is it dangerous? Is it dangerous for a wasp to? Is a bee dangerous? Is a wasp dangerous? It's difficult to say that. Difficult to say it's a sakonos nefoshes. But is it traumatic? Yes, absolutely. Especially some members of the family will find it very traumatic. So in the Piskei Teshuvos in Shimon Shin Tes Zayin, he quotes that according to the Alter Rebbe, he mentions a wasp is like a fly and like a flea, whatever. And but then he says, but the reality is that when you have bees or wasps flying around, they cause pachad, fear and shock and frightened people are. And because of this, he writes that since they are traumatizing the people in the sukkah, you would be allowed to, if you can't just shoo them away, you would be allowed to trap them. And so one way, as I said, is if you put a cup over it, and then you could, let's say, slip a card underneath the cup, and then you'll take the cup with the card, with the bee inside, the wasp, and you go outside the sukkah, and you'll separate the card from the cup, and the wasp will go back on its merry way and hopefully not come back again. So that is allowed if people are getting all anxious, that would be permitted. All right, we can go on. What's the next question? Okay, one who lived. So this is a very interesting question, which I'm not going to give you an adequate answer. That's question number 7. So someone comes over to me. He's actually born in Eretz HaKodesh, not to a frum family, came to Chutz loOretz, and found his way, became a Baal Tshuva, married, Baruch Hashem, and is now asking, does he have a shiur to go back to live in Eretz Yisroel? So there are reasons which justify leaving Eretz Yisroel to go to Chutz loOretz. The impression is that they are for temporary. But here's the question. Is the permission allowing you to leave Eretz Yisroel, and once you're to Chutz loOretz, you can stay there? Or do you need to have that reason? Does that have to be ongoing? That it's not just the exiting Eretz Yisroel, but is the living in Chutz loOretz, which would have to be justified, let's say, lissa isho for Panorama. That's the question. Now, I did not manage to find sources for this, but I thought I'd share it with you. I do remember a sikha which I tried to trace, sikha which we learned in the last few years. So it's around Tavshilin Lamed Hey, where there was from around 1962 was a seder that a group of Bachrim from Eretz Yisroel would come to spend some time with the Rebbe. At first it was a few months, and it became a year, known as the Kvutza. And so you got this group of Eretz Yisrael Bachrim in Crown Heights in 770, and sometimes it looks like the level of diligence in learning needed a little bit of a booster. And so the Rebbe speaks about this, and he says that your heter to leave Eretz HaKodesh to come to Chutz loOretz is contingent upon Lilmed Torah. And that the Rebbe took the view, it's not just then, but throughout your sojourn in Chutz loOretz, it's imperative that you are increasing in your limud Torah, because that was the reason why you came out in the first place. So the Rebbe seemed to take the view that the justification for leaving Eretz Yisroel, Lisa Isho, Lilmed Torah, would have to be throughout their presence. It's not just a passport to be allowed to leave the country, but it is actually an ongoing need. And therefore, if those reasons fall away, the person should be going back to Eretz Yisroel. But it's obviously a massive, massive question, so it needs more careful advice and consultation, etc. Okay, so now here I have the following question. A very good friend of mine, he is professional, living somewhere in the States, and he davens in this shul. It's an Ashkenaz shul. It just happens to be that the timing kind of fits with his schedule. gets in the office on time, fine. And it turns out that they're davening and they're up to Shemona Esrei, and he's on for Oz Yoshir. And in Chabad, generally, we don't skip davening to catch up the minyan. So this is his question. Now they're holding by Shemona Esrei. So really, I responded to him first of all that there's no even when you have the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch and Simon Nun Beis talks about skipping in order if someone comes late to shul. He talks about skipping in Psukei de Zimra or skipping before, but from after Yotzer Oyer, there's no skipping there in any case. So if he's holding us Yoshir, there's nothing to skip between there and Shemona Esrei. The question would have been if he had realized the problem earlier on, should he have skipped parts of Sukkot Zimra in order to help them have their minyan in time? Well, actually, what I did respond to him is that he has other options. He has an option that he's holding by Yoshir, let them start Shemona Esrei, and he will wait by Yishtabach until they do Chazar Sashatz. That's not a problem. So then he can be part of the Tisha Oinim by waiting by Chazar Sashatz, by waiting by Yishtabach. That's one option. And here's another option, which I said to him. All right, they're on for Shemona Esrei, you're on for Oz Yoshir. If they will start Shemona Esrei, if they've got 6 mispal of them, and then by the time they've finished Shemona Esrei, you're going to be after Shema, you're going to be close to Goal Yisrael. Okay, so then when they do Chazar Sashatz, there are exactly 10 people, so he's needed for the 10. If he davens Shemona Esrei word for word along with the Chazan, so he counts for the Tisha Oinim. Yeah, so this is what you can see here. I've got this from the Sefer Ishi Yisrael, a contemporary Sefer, quoting Reb Shalom Auerbach. He says, the ones who are davening with a Chazan word for word, they will make up for the Tisha Shoimin, which means Tisha Oinim. So so he's got 2 options where he can help out this minyan, as I said, either if you can afford the time to stop there between Yishtabach and Yotzer Oyer and wait till after Chazar Sashatz, or if he does his quiet Shemona Esrei along with the Chazan. As I said, it was an Ashkenaz minyan, therefore for him to offer to be the Chazan, that probably would be less simple. So now Rabbi Yomin Singer is writing, he asked Rabbi Schneebal, when I moved to Manchester from Eretz Yisroel, if it was permissible. He told me that he can't say it's not allowed because so many people do this. I should have in mind that I want to go back if the situation alters. Thank you, Rabbi Yomin, for that. That was probably about 45 years ago, yeah? Okay. All right. Let's move on. So here we have a question of a Geir who just recently was Megayer. Just recently. But his biological father is Jewish, and now he's become a kosher Geir. So for Alila Torah, could he be called to the Torah with his Jewish father's name, or does he have to be called up Ben Avraham? So this question actually was put to the late Rav Weiss, the Minchas Yitzchok, who was the Rov in Manchester at the time. I don't know, I never heard of Rabbi Shechter, Rabbi Yaakov Shechter, who was the Rov of Belfast. This is going back in the 50s. And he asked this question, whether a person who was born from a non-Jewish mother and then was Megayer. So in his situation, it's slightly different because there, the boy was Misgayer at a very young age, and then the Jewish father with his mother who were Megayer, they brought him up. So you can then not because of a biological father, but as an adoptive father at least. So he's a little bit okay with calling up with the adoptive father's name. But otherwise, now, which is in our case, he takes the view that you should be calling up Ben Avraham. And there's a story in the Gemara about someone who is Mary Barochel, I think. And he says that he was Rav Mary Barochel. He was mentioned with his mother's name, although his father was Isser Giora. His father had had relations with this Rochel, his mother, when he wasn't Jewish, and therefore he is known as Mori Bar Rochel rather than Mori Bar Isser, because so that's in other words basically the psak is that really though he should be called up Ben Avraham rather than Ben whatever his Jewish biological father's name is. Okay, we go on to the next question, and that is someone repositioned the mezuzah. Okay, it's Elul time, people are checking their mezuzahs, and in Eretz Yisroel, there's a big drive now to go around to people's homes and check their mezuzahs, biggest oirus. Actually, someone sent me, and I didn't get around to reviewing, sent me to review. He'd written guidelines for positioning of mezuzahs, because part of the checking mezuzahs is not just this text of the mezuzah, but also the position of the mezuzah. So, all right, and we have in Chabad a certain policy, and that is that we follow the dictate of which way the door swings. Where the door swings into a room, so then that's considered the interior. So the curious thing is that if you have a room where the door swings into the corridor, so we're going to put the mezuzah as if the corridor is the inside and the room is the outside. We put it on the right as you exit from the room into the corridor because the door swings into the corridor. And in public buildings, it's a very common thing that they make the doors swing out, and that's for fire regulations. If chas v'shalom there's a fire, that people will be able to push the door rather than to have to pull the door back. So in Beis Lubavitch is a public building, and so those are many of the doors swing out into the corridor, and so the mezuzahs are, as you come into the room, the mezuzahs are on your left because of this anomaly. Okay, so now what happens if you come into a house and you see the mezuzahs positioned in a certain way, and then you say, no, we should put the mezuzahs the other way. So now the question is, do I make a brocha when I affix the mezuzah on the other side or higher up, lower down, whatever it may be? Do I make a brocha when I affix the same mezuzah? If it's a different mezuzah, for sure a brocha. And if it's the same mezuzah on a different doorway, that can be discussed. But here it's the same mezuzah, but instead of being on this side of the door frame, it's going to be the other side of the door frame. Brocha or no brocha? So I answered you should not say a brocha. And I explained my position. Yes, we have questions about where to put the mezuzah. It can be this way, it can be this way, and we come to a hachroa. We come to a conclusion. This is the way it's done. Are we 100% or is it 90% or 70%? Why? So this is the way we follow. We follow haketzir. Does that mean the other shittas are wrong? It means that we cannot follow. We can only put it in one place. So therefore, we tilt the balance into one direction. But it doesn't mean that the other one is wrong. So as a result, if I take a mezuzah from one side and put it on the other side, you know what? Perhaps 70% I'm making a tikkun, but 30% I'm actually spoiling it. Okay, but I have my derech hapsak, but I'm not going to dismiss the other derech and say it's totally wrong to the degree that I should make a bracha. No, I don't feel that's right. Okay, that's what I answered. Now, last week, the text on this slide is not connected with the title. It has a spare space, and someone came into me this afternoon, with another feedback from last shiur. I guess in the shiur goes live on anash.org on Wednesday, and so that's why I often get feedback on Wednesday or Thursday from listeners to the recording. Okay, so last week we had this question about a balkoire who is listening to the bracha of the one who has the aliyah. Should the balkoire answer baruch hu v'och shemoi to the bracha of the one who has the aliyah, or possibly not, because the bracha is actually for him to do the mitzvah.
of Kriyas HaTorah. That was the discussion last week. So this Ingerman, who I believe himself is the Baal Koreh, so he sends me the following. In Shulchan Aruch, we have an idea of saying in Shulchan Aruch, we have the idea of saying 100 brochos a day. There's a whole story with David HaMelech. Then you have Mea brochos. And indeed, the reason why we have the morning brochos, the list of 15 morning brochos, is in order to make up the quota of 100 brochos. That's why it's looking at the Rebbe, Shulchan Aruch, Siman Mem Hey, Siman Mem Vav. Okay. So you have in a regular day, you will have approximately 100 brachos. Shemona Esrei 3 times. Now comes on Rosh Hashanah, it comes Shabbos, Yomtov, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. You have less. You don't have 18 brachos in Shemona Esrei. You have much less. All right. So you're short of brachos. Yom Kippur becomes even more because you don't have the brachos at meal times. So you've got you're short of brachos. So it says you should listen to Chazar Sashatz. You should have in mind that the brachos of the Chazan will make up your 100 brachos. So this is a footnote in one edition of the Mate Ephraim in Siman Tov Reish Chof Beis. It says a footnote to a footnote. It says, I was asked whether, when listening on Yom Kippur to Chazar Sashatz, should I answer Brocho V'Orch Shemoi in order to be able to make that up for my quota of 100 brachos? And after thinking about this question, I believe it's obvious that you should answer, because even when you are Yoitzer, let's say for Shofar and Megillah, many eminent poskim say that you are allowed to answer Brocho V'Orch Shemoi, and it's not a hefsek. And he gives us a reference earlier to Siman Hilchos Shofar, even though many disagree and say that you shouldn't answer because of hefsek. But in this instance, it's for sure not a hefsek. And indeed, that's the minig that people do answer Brocho V'Orch Shemoi after Birchas HaShachar, which possibly is also done to make up your minyan of bracha. And Chazar Sashatz and Shemona Esrei, every Shabbos and Yomtov, even though you need those to make up your quota of 100 brachas, nevertheless, people do answer Brocho V'Orch Shemoi. So that's his psak. So now, since he's saying when you need to get your Mea brachas, you still answer Brocho V'Orch Shemoi. So possibly the same is with the Baal Koreh, if he needs the bracha of the Oil of the Torah. It's obviously not identical, because there you're talking about Mea brachas, here you're talking about Birchas HaMitzvahs, to be Yotze a Birchas HaMitzvah. Now, where does it talk about Brocho V'Orch Shemoi? In the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, Sim Kuf Chav Daled, the Din of Chazar Sashatz, it says, talks about not saying Brocho V'Orch Shemoi if you are answering during a Kainet Soyer. Then he says the following: whenever you hear a bracha and you have intention to be Yoitze, for example, Kiddush, Avdolah, Birchas HaPeiros, VaMitzvahs, you shouldn't answer Brocho V'Orch Shemoi to a bracha which you want to be Yoitze. Because Shomea Koine, if you say Brocho Shemoi, if you're interrupted, and you're not allowed to interrupt in the middle of a bracha. Then the Alter Rebbe adds, you're not Yoitze, because you're interrupting between Hashem's name and Malchus and Melech HaOlam. In the interruption with something which is not instituted by Chachamim. The Brocho V'Orch Shemoi is not mentioned anywhere in the Gemara. It's something which is a much more recent institution. Therefore, you have distorted the matbeya, the coin, the phrase, as it was coined by the Chachamim. So you see, the Alter Rebbe says, if you're Yoitze brocha, you should not be answering Brocho V'Orch Shemoi. So we're back to our question with the Kriyas HaTorah, with the Baal Koreh. I just want to add one thing. I once got a call from someone who had heard Havdalah, and he said he answered Brocho V'Orch Shemoi at the long bracha. So I asked him, which part did you answer Brocho V'Orch Shemoi? At the beginning, Baruch Hashem Elokeinu Cha'olam, or at the end, Baruch Hashem Emigrated L'Chayil? So this was 2 hours after Shabbos. He's not going to find another guy to make Havdalah for him so quickly. So he said it was the end. Baruch Hashem Emigrated L'Chayil. So if that's the case, you're Yoitze. Because you can see the Alter Rebbe says, what's the problem? He says, if you answer Brocho V'Orch Shemoi, it's interrupting between Shem and Malchus.
But if it's at the end, there's no Malchus there, just Baruch Atah Hashem Avdim Kodesh L'Chol. So you can infer in the Alter Rebbe's words that is only a problem in the beginning of the bracha with the 6 words between Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu and Melech Ha'olam. Yeah, but if it's at the end of a bracha, just Baruch Atah Hashem, and the ending, possibly it's not a problem. Although, yes, now I'm thinking, and possibly what's the svara to differentiate, but fine, that there is room to be made. Yes, indeed. Sfardim do answer Bochu Baruch Shemoy, and they also sometimes say L'chaim, and not with glasses of whiskey, yeah? Just L'chaim. Indeed, you're right. Yes, and so they obviously don't see this as a hefsek, and it's all just the applause to say we're on the same page as you. We're going to go on the last thing for tonight, and that is about the saga of the measurement of flour for challah. If you remember, some weeks ago we had a discussion about this, and how I showed that in the Kahos Siddur, which was published in 1947, so there it has a copy from the original printed Vilna of Tofresh Ein Aleph, and it says challah you take from 3 liters of flour, which is approximately 3 pounds of flour. And then I showed how there's this Hayom Yom equivalent, which was published in English, Young Scholars Diary, and there it had about 1,600 grams. Well, 3 pounds of flour works about 1,200 grams, and here it has the shiur of 1,600 grams, and this, I understood, was published also during the war years, 1943, 1944, and so I was concerned about the discrepancy or the contradiction. Here it says Gimel Litrois, which is 1,200 grams, and here it says 1,600 grams. So someone by the name of Reb Menachem Rothenberg, who is a Baruch Hashem, a budding Meira Hira in Crown Heights, he was quite intrigued, and he tried to follow this up. So here's a fascinating story that, as I said, at the same time when the Hayom Yom was published in Tafshin Gimel, there was a parallel diary. You can see it, if you can see on the screen, Young Scholars Diary. There you are. And it's got inside, it's got an entry for every single day of the week, and it's got a blank page on the other side. And so they also, in this diary, they have questions. And you're meant to write your question, and when you're meant to write, find the answer for the question. And then, at the same time, is being published concurrently the talks and tales, monthly. The answers to the questions in the diary would appear around the time of the year in the talks and tales. So you read here on the 25th of Sivan, of 19 Tafshin Dalet of 1944. He asked the question, do you know how to do Hafroshas Challah nowadays? And so that was a question. So apparently there was an answer, but when these diaries, these English diaries, were reprinted about 10 years ago by Rabbi Shalom Shapiro, who's a son-in-law of the late Rabbi Dr. Nissim Mindel. And so they reprinted this whole thing, and the editor kind of updated the stuff. And so this entry here, as you see it on the screen, was updated by the editor, which explained to me why he's throwing in grams altogether, because in America they don't know what you're talking about. In America they talk about pounds and ounces. And so that's what happened over here. The 1,600 grams is the handiwork of a relatively contemporary editor, and so he just put in Reb Chaim Noah's shiur. But that answers my contradiction, because this wasn't for 1944. This was added about, as I said, just about 10 years ago. So what is the shiur? All right, so we have the minig in Russia was with 3 pounds, and then Reb Chaim Noah, who lived in Eretz Yisroel, so 3 pounds is about 1,200 grams, and Reb Chaim Noah increased the shiur to about 1,600 grams, but that was part of our discussion back then. Okay, That's what I have for you for this evening. I'm going to stop here. I wish you all a very good night and a good Shabbos and an inspiring Chai Elul. And I must finish off with this one. I got a message from someone that that the reason why, see, in Lebanon, it's Chutz loOretz. And that's why they had to have 2 days Yomtov. Okay. Be well, and we should see all Eden, the captive, the hostages, and all Eden, tranquil and safe, and all the Shlem with Mashiach Tzidkein.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.